Okay, everyone, welcome. Um, Go ahead and say hello if you're in the room. And also, if you're new, please please indicate that you're new as well. So we'll get started in just a few minutes um, as people get into the room. Um, so happy full moon as well. Um, so tonight is a pink moon, which sounds fun and exciting and sassy. Um, so maybe we'll do something around working with the full moon energy. This is as some of you may also do this, but this is a big ceremony. Well, every full moon is a big ceremony evening for different um, communities. Um, so after our time tonight in practice, I will move out into my backyard and I'll do um, fire ceremony, fire puja tonight, um, and hopefully carry our practice into fire ceremony as well. So the pink moon is about new beginnings. It Some people believe that it marks the end, like the official end of winter, and moves us into spring. Even though we've been in spring for a month, it's also a time of fertility as well, and new beginnings. So overall, new beginnings, fertility. Beginning to do things differently, and quite honestly, many of us could use a little bit of a jump start. As we move um, into I guess we would say the middle part, in the middle of the year. God, it just feels like the year just started. It just feels like January just started, and now we're moving into May and soon June, and half the year will be over. Um, and so, yeah, lots is happening, lots is going on. Um, and whatever comes, whatever arises for us, we want to make sure we're practicing to meet whatever arises for us. Um, so, welcome to all the new folks here. This is a guided practice based on the tradition of Medicine Buddha. In Tibetan, Medicine Buddha's name is Minla Sangye. So Minla means medicine, Sangye means purified one. Um, and the Medicine Buddha tradition is not just about healing, but it's also really about change. It's about um, gathering the resources we need to be well. So it's energetic gathering. It's shifting karma and conditions around us. My experience of Medicine Buddha and my study of Medicine Buddha tradition is also related to the work of social change as well. We find when we study the tantras that and tantras mean um, the teachings and commentaries related to this tradition of Buddhism, which we would say Vajrayana Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, but Tantra also referring to tantric traditions, right? So tantric related to um, moving into the essence of things really quickly, into the most authentic expression of reality and the mind as quickly as possible. But in any case, when we look at these commentaries associated with Medicine Buddha, we find a lot of commentary around how Medicine Buddha and the mythology, right? That Medicine Buddha was this being who was of course moving along the path to become enlightened, and he was able to deepen this bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is defined as the wish, the work for all beings to be free and to be free and happy and safe. Bodhicitta is the coming together of compassion and wisdom, are a deep ethical care and a direct clarity. So care and clarity coming together, creating this force, right? And this force maybe is expressed through love, but this becomes a force that's directed out into the world, into the experiences of other beings, and it becomes what I call an irresistible movement. It becomes irresistible, like this irresistible wish and belief. Well, it's a wish that all beings are free. Is also this belief that all beings deserve to be free as well. So it's irresistible momentum that propels us into the liberation work of all beings, including ourselves. But the bodhicitta doesn't come about for us in our experience unless we too are deeply engaged in the work of liberation, right? So bodhicitta can't arise authentically unless we're cultivating that experience of compassion and wisdom or care and clarity coming together for ourselves. Like we're getting clear about our situation and the situation of the world. And not only are we getting clear, we're also learning how to care because we're developing, or rather, we're losing the ability to shield ourselves from the pain of others and the pain of ourselves. And when we lose that shield, that boundary, then the experiences, well, the suffering of others and our suffering begins to touch. It begins to interact, and our suffering becomes other people's suffering, and vice versa. So we see ourselves as others, right? And we begin to understand that, yeah, suffering sucks. We don't want to suffer. If we want that for ourselves, chances are other beings want that for themselves as well. So that's the compassion and the clarity coming together. And we say, oh, then I am ethically mandated to be an agent of liberation because I know what I know now. I know it because I experience it. And as we always know from our practice of Buddha Dharma, this path is a path of experience. It's experiential. This is an experiential path of liberation. If you're not interested in experiencing, then you won't be able to get free. It's liberation is found through the experience of phenomena, not by bypassing phenomena. All phenomena, right? We want to experience everything. We want to experience emotions and thoughts. We want to experience, you know, everything. We want to experience movement. We want to experience love. We want to experience the winds and, whatever it is. We want to be present to everything. It's through the experience. Well, but the experience itself is actually trying to show us how to get free. And this is I would say the primary teaching of Tantra, I think. Well, it's a primary teaching of Buddhist Tantra, which says that, phenomenal reality is just trying to point us back to its essential nature. And then these are the methods that helps us to experience phenomena and to allow that experience to open into the essence of phenomena itself. This is what we're trying to get to. We have this term Buddha nature. Um, this Buddha nature is just another way of saying our most essential self, our most authentic, direct self. You know, of course, self is a tricky word because self is related to ego, but it's the essence of everything, right? So the essence of self itself is freedom. It's spacious. It's, we use this word empty, but empty is a tricky term as well because it doesn't really capture the experience. It's emptiness. Yes, it's emptiness, but it's emptiness that is imbued or full of an energy, a suchness. So it's not this empty void, but it's empty, and at the same time is permeated with this quality, and this quality is what lies at the root of phenomena. This is where phenomena comes from. You know, um, I think this intermingling of emptiness and suchness um, is also is also how we can relate to spaciousness, which is all very abstract. I understand and realize that. As by the way, um, well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So the spaciousness. When I talk about space, I'm talking about emptiness filled with this suchness. And the suchness is what gives rise to all phenomena. When the suchness is conscious, when the suchness knows itself and understands its relationship to emptiness, I think that is the expression of enlightenment. I think that is that fundamental space. Well, it's the fundamental occurrence that allows. It's the fundamental occurrence from which the deity arises. It's that fundamental suchness that knows itself. Um, it's always strange to sit and say things for the first time. I have no idea where the fuck this is coming from, but here we go. Right? Um, yeah. And this is so when this occurs, when such knows itself and arises, you know, as the deity, then it's that deity, that occurrence is only motivation is to lead all other expressions of suchness back to its fundamental nature. Um, I don't know. Of course, this is a wisdom deity, right? This is the space from which wisdom deities arise, and of course, there are many kinds of deities, but fundamentally, a wisdom deity is an expression of suchness that knows itself, that has no other goal or agenda but to lead all other expressions of suchness back to its fundamental nature. Um, it's like an ocean trying to settle itself, because all these waves, right? It's like I guess if an ocean could settle itself, but just this hypothetically saying, the ocean is trying to settle itself. It's trying to calm the waves. And I think in the same way, conscious suchness arises only to try to calm the rest of phenomenon back to suchness, back to its fundamental nature. Um, mhm. Of course, right. So this brings us back to the practice of medicine Buddha. For I know, you know, I go into all this because I know many of you are very, very, very new to this whole thing. And I just received an email actually from someone who was just talking about rituals and these traditions and not really knowing what all this means. And as someone who also is a convert into this tradition, I didn't know what anything meant. I just thought the colors were really nice, and I liked the costumes. The costumes seemed like it was like during drag. So when I was a monk and I never knew what the names for the robes were. I just call it my red dress. So I was like, oh, I'm just gonna put on my dress, which is actually, for those of you who've read Radical Dharma, Reverend Angel and I had this exchange exactly about this thing where when we came into the tradition, it just felt really queer because it was just like it felt like we were given permission to dress up, to wear these dresses, and to be something, that we weren't, and just like we really found that thrilling, and then you stop finding it thrilling. You're like, you know, red isn't really my color, really. Actually, I mean yellow maybe, black definitely, gray, dark blue, all of that, but red, I don't know. I just, I gave up all of that because it was just so much fabric. It was just so much fabric. It was just like taking yards of fabric and just wrap it around yourself. You have to wear it in the summer, and I was like, what's the point wearing all this fabric when I can wear my short shorts and my tank tops and flip flops? I mean, I don't know why that isn't sacred. Um, anyway, let's get to practice. So let's do this. Let's hold our prayer request tonight. For those of you who know, we often have people post prayer requests publicly, but we've done this before, but let's begin by everyone just bringing their prayer requests, into consciousness. So just start really thinking about your aspirations for yourself, for your loved ones, for the world, for situations that are happening anywhere. Your wishes for all beings to be free, for people to feel well, to get better, for pandemics to end, for injustice to end, everything, everything. And just like really, really in your practice, just really get used to like, in nonprofit world, we call this like the golden scenario when you're doing, project planning. It's like the golden scenario. What's like the ultimate dream? Right? And of course, the ultimate dream and Dharma is for all beings to be free, right? For all of us to become conscious of our suchness and return back, into stillness, which we would say is nirvana, maybe, right? What's your golden scenario? What's your golden aspiration? Maybe it is for all beings to be free, but also just add more. You know, what else do you want for yourself and others? And this is a full moon again. So this is a pink moon. So this is about beginning again. Begin again. And this teaching begin again has been so powerful for me um, for like a year. Begin again. You know, so your golden aspirations for yourself, for others. And this is the energy of compassion here when we start thinking about ourselves and others, wanting to be free and safe and happy. This is it. That the fruition of compassion is this ultimate wish for all beings, regardless of who they are or what they've done, right? That all beings should be free, deserve to be free from what, right? To be free from delusion, to be free from hate, to be free from intense, overwhelming craving. See, I can do, classical real Buddhism. See, I just named the three poisons. That's about all I can do these days, but there we go. All beings deserve to be free from the binary, from the illusion of separateness and difference on the ultimate level, right? But to begin to fundamentally start believing that I am just like all other beings, regardless of who these beings are. I want to be happy and I want to avoid suffering. So allowing that reflection, right, to take us into another level of practice, that I want that one, I am like every other being I've ever met, any being, every being, both form beings and formless beings, right? Any being that arises within this realm, like I am just a reflection of that being. I don't want to suffer and I want to be happy. Just like every other being, even the beings that we consider evil and vile, that we don't like or maybe we hate, I'm still just like them. And secondly, that they too, like me, deserve to be free, right? To be free from violence and hate, to be free from delusion and all of that, like the craving and the hate, to be free from all of that. And what does it mean, even further, to start taking refuge in that wish for all of us to be free? What does that mean to take refuge in that? How is that aspiration, or how can that aspiration take care of you right now, given everything that we're moving through right now in the world? How does this basic wish that we all deserve to be free, how does that take care of you? And how does that move us into action? What are we going to do? How does everything that we can do become a part of this grand golden scenario, this grand liberation struggle? When we talk about the deity, right, becoming a part of our being, what we're doing in this moment, or what happens in that process, that we just start letting that aspiration sink in. We start believing it. We start believing it, we start trusting it, we start letting it take over. Just as some of you let Jesus take the wheel, let this aspiration, this deep wish for beings to be free, and our motivation to get beings free, let that start taking over. Let it possess you. As we enter into this new beginning again, can we make a commitment or a vow, or just like try to let ourselves be possessed by this aspiration for all beings to be free? Every being, everything deserves to be free. All phenomena, as we've just talked about, all phenomena is trying to get free from this delusion of existence, that we exist. Because as long as we believe that we exist, we believe we will also continue to believe in the suffering and the violence. And that the suffering also becomes seductive as well. And turning our attention now to your heart center. Let's turn our attention to our heart center. And if you can tonight, if you're able to just have some attention with the breath, I encourage you to imagine breathing in and out of the heart center. So as you let this aspiration really sink in, as you start to really embody this aspiration, we're breathing into this awakening energy, this awakening aspiration, this compassion. And it's almost as if when we're inhaling, noticing the space arising, you know, in our diaphragm and upper chest and so forth, we're giving this new energy, this awakening energy, a lot of space to start growing and deepening. This in breath also helps to feed this energy as well, like oxygen feeding a fire. So breathing deeply into the heart center, into this energy, we deepen this energy, we awaken it, we begin to circulate it through the body. And you can choose to stay here, right, with this particular part of the practice. And if you want, you can go a little further with me. And in this next part of the practice, which is again optional, we're going to move into our internal exhale. Okay, our internal exhale practice, right? So as we breathe, inhale into the heart center, we're inhaling into the energy, right? And then as we exhale, we imagine that that exhale is not leaving the heart center, but that exhale just stays in the body and just begins to spread out from the heart center throughout the body, right? As if we're filling up the body from the heart center through the exhale. As we keep the exhale inside, filling it up. But as that breath is exhaled throughout the body, we're also exhaling this awakening energy of compassion throughout the body. And as we exhale, imagine that that exhale is just kind of is touching every extremity of the body, even to the very tip of your fingers, to the top of your head, down into your toes. That this internal exhale is just moving this energy everywhere throughout the body. And again, you can stay right here where you're at. Now we can go just a little bit further now. And then this next part of the practice. So we're inhaling, feeding into this growing energy in the body, into the heart center. And instead of quickly exhaling internally, I invite you to hold the breath for just a few seconds, or as long as it feels appropriate for you. So it can be from 3 seconds up to 10, 15 seconds, or whatever feels appropriate. We all have different capacities for practices like this. So again, breathing into the heart center, holding the breath right in the heart center. Releasing in the internal exhale. And what we're doing in this part of the practice is we're intensifying this life force energy, which we call prana for our practices tonight. So this prana, where prana rides the breath. So as we inhale into the heart center, prana is gathering into the heart center. And as we hold the breath there, the prana begins to intensify. We feel that. We feel warmth, we feel pressure, we feel tension. That is gathering prana. And when the prana gets really intense, we release it in the internal exhale. And so that energized, intensified prana super energizes the body, but it's the energy body that we're energizing and awakening. This is so much of the practice of beginning again, right? Of starting over, of entering into something new, of leaving winter, entering into spring. We awaken, right? And if you begin to feel, if you're holding the breath, if you're feeling dizzy or lightheaded, please take a break. Turn your attention to the weight of the body and the seat that you're sitting on, allowing gravity to take care of you, allowing gravity to hold your attention. We're just going to spend just a couple more moments here, no matter where you are in the practice, just spending a few more moments just practicing with where you're at. And when you're ready, so again, turning your attention back to the heart center, I want you to begin to imagine a pink full moon appearing in the heart center, just right here, right in the upper chest, a pink moon, just the size of maybe the palm of your hand, just beginning to to awaken in the heart center, pink full moon. And the radiance of that pink full moon begins to radiate this pink light throughout the body. Now, for those of you who are obsessed um, over Sailor Moon, which is a big millennial thing for some of us, go ahead and imagine yourself becoming Sailor Moon. If you want, I give you permission. Become a Sailor Scout. Not that I've seen the cartoons at all, but allowing this pink moon to just begin to radiate through the body. And this, again, this energy, this pink moonlight is about fertility. It's about newness. It's about awakening. And that is the energy that must always accompany the energy or the experience of compassion. Compassion must always, always be reawakened every second. So linking this radiating pink light throughout the body, this moonlight, connecting it deeply to this energy of compassion, that this moonlight begins to actually also feed into your aspirations for all beings to be free. And what is your experience of this? And again, you don't have to see anything clearly or feel anything. Just have a sense that something's happening. That this pink moon in your heart center is radiating into your aspirations, your compassion for all beings to be free. Knowing that we always have to begin again with aspirations over and over again, beginning again. So for those of you who are new to practice like this, I would just suggest just allowing the creativity to whatever extent is appropriate for your night, but to allow as much creativity to emerge in your experience, that this pink moon arises in your heart center. You're just being filled with energy. And you don't have to think about it beyond that, but I'm just my body begins to be is filling with this pink moonlight. Right? And knowing that this pink moonlight is about beginning again, it's about renewal. starting over, fertility, growing, creativity. It's about all of that. Can you begin to imagine that this energy is also feeding into situations in your life at the beginning now? The first stage of this, beginning to imagine that this pink moonlight, this energy is beginning to feed into situations in your life that you want to begin again, to be restarted, to be rejuvenated, to be refreshed. Right? What seeds need to be planted? What needs to be let go of? What just needs to be scrapped and started all over again? What are you exhausted doing, right? And what do you need energy to do again? Just let this pink moonlight flow into these situations, right? And we're gonna call on the energy, the consciousness of Medicine Buddha now to really energize this movement of energy, because this is the energy of healing as well, this beginning again. And so when we begin our mantra practice, just allowing the mantra to really support the movement of energy into these parts of our lives, knowing that this energy is an expression of Medicine Buddha. And you can sit and listen or chant with us, wherever feels appropriate. Okay? O te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, bekenze, ma bekenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Te ata bekenze, te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. And for the next stage of our mantra practice, I invite you to imagine that this energy, right, this pink moonlight of restoration and beginning again, begins to be directed into your prayer requests. So, any prayer requests that you've been holding, I invite you to direct this energy into that prayer request and beginning to imagine that this energy begins to fulfill your needs, wants, aspirations of this prayer request. That whoever is healed, that people get what they need to be well, that maybe those who are transitioning into the bardo spirit realm are supported, whatever it may be, just allowing this energy to support those you're praying for, relying on the mantra to strengthen the transference of this energy. We begin again. Ut eata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te ata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Teata umbegenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata umbegenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata umbegenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. And so for our last section of mantra practice tonight, I want you to imagine that we begin to send this energy out into the world, out into situations, experiences that people, communities, movements are having right now. And as this energy begins to help people begin again to experience fertilization, creation, creativity, to restore people's energy and compassion and love that's so crucial in the work that many of us are trying to do right now. So sending this pink moonlight and beginning to imagine that our bodies are now radiating. We're radiating, releasing this pink moonlight into the world around us, that we are these pink glowing orbs, sassy and fabulous, changing the world, restoring the world, replenishing what is being destroyed. And we begin again. O teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze ma begenze laza sumunga te soa. Teata begenze begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lasse sumunga de soa. Teata begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. So returning our attention back to pink moon in our heart center. We're gonna let this pink moon stay present for as long as we can as we begin to exit out of our practice. And so throughout the night, the rest of the day, depending on where you're at, trying to return back to this radiating heart, this radiating moon and pink moonlight in the heart, radiating throughout the body, and particularly as you go to sleep. Just focusing, using this moonlight, this pink moon and its radiance as an anchor for your attention. So really focusing on this moonlight as you fall asleep, letting this healing, restorative, fertile light to guide you into the bardo of dream. So coming out of the practice, coming back into the space. If you need some grounding, just shifting your attention to the weight of your body, making contact with the seat, maybe your feet on the ground as an anchor, or maybe just gently, lightly touching some part of your body. Just allow that gentle touch to bring us back into this time and space, a moment. Maybe moving through 3 deep exhalations, or cleansing breaths by breathing deeply into the nose, out of the mouth. As you exhale, releasing, letting go of anything that feels heavy, solid, or stuck. One more time. Gently beginning to awaken the body by moving through some simple awakening movements, some stretching, some shimmying, right? Some twerking. Maybe drop it like it's hot, but be careful. And we'll transition into our last prayer, which is Shantideva's prayer. I actually have another prayer for Shantideva, which I may begin to use next week, which I was reading over today. But for the time being, we're going to stick with this one. So they'll appear in the chat box in a moment. And then after the prayer, I'll just spend, if there are any questions, I'll just spend a few moments answering questions. You can put those right directly into the ask a question box as well. So we'll begin. You see that the prayer coming up in the chat box there. We have one more part before we begin. Okay, here we go. So we'll recite this 3 times. We begin. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space, with great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach until the ends of space. Okay, thank you so much for your practice today. And I'm just gonna just quickly answer this one question, two questions now. First question: can you describe suchness in as many words as possible as a felt experience? I'm getting what you're saying, yeah, not yet, and yet not quite. Yeah. Um, well, it's it's beyond this. It's really something that we have to experiment in feeling, and this is really. I know there are different. As we move through the tradition of Buddhism, there are different schools, kinds, focuses of meditation. But I think ultimately what Buddhist meditation is leading us into is this experience of suchness. So it's an experiential thing. Um, it's another way to frame it is like, there's like, it's like being in, it's like the air in space, right? The suchness is the air, oxygen particularly, right? Well, oxygen of course for us, for living beings, for is what we breathe to sustain ourselves. And so like suchness is like the oxygen. Without the oxygen within space, there's nothing that can survive or that can be. So that's what I would say right now. There may be other words in the future. Can you speak a bit about different possible effects of these practices when one is a beginner and starts to implement them on a more daily basis? I'm asking because I've noticed that the discomfort that I experienced before I started these practices has even intensified in some sort of way. hmm Yeah, discomfort that I experienced before I started these practices has been intensified in some sort of way. Yeah. Um, One of the things that's happening, that often happens, is that sometimes it's not that things are intensifying, it's that we're getting closer to the thing that we don't want to deal with. And so that creates this experience of something intensifying. Um, when we're implementing these practices in our daily life, I think that often we have a tendency not to go far enough, and so we kind of there's an audacity. There is an audacity to this tradition of practice that says all or nothing, right? There's a very strong sentiment, all or nothing. So it's not, let's not dip our toe in the water. Let's just jump in the water. Um, and there's a sense that there's a type of trust that has to develop, an intense, deep trust that if we jump in, we're going to be caught. Um, Also, some of this intensity that's maybe increasing also comes from the ways in which space is being introduced to us, and how we shut down when we're confronted with spaciousness, right? Because spaciousness is risky. It's risky because it's going to actually directly impact this experience of self and ego. It's hard to hold on to the ego when it gets thrown into wide open space, right? There's a dissolving of attachment to ego with space. But if we stay really contracted, then we feel as if we stay safe, right? So the ego, when it's looking into space, right, is going to be a kind of a freak out, because it doesn't know what it is anymore in relationship to space. Um, so that may be some of the things that you may be moving through as well. Um, so continue to, well, always continue to take care of yourself, right? So if this doesn't feel generative or spacious or open, then please, don't do it, or um, just do it in this practice, in this session, or in spaces like this. And then a great thing that starts to happen actually is what we experience in formal practice, particularly in tantric formal practice, begins to eventually seep into our life. So it's not something that we begin to practice, but it begins to be something we experience. We begin to experience, this sensitivity to spaciousness, to emptiness, right? We begin to become sensitive to the fluidity of everything that's happening around us and inside of us. Um, so you don't have to try so hard, sometimes. And sometimes that's the easiest way for some of us to begin to link our formal practice with our just like daily living, moving through the world. Um, but we can go slower. Again, just go slower with the practice. It doesn't have to be full on at the beginning. Just gradual. Um, and then let's see this question. Thinking of beautiful pink moon. Can you tell us where we may find the Shanti? This comes out of the Bodhisattva's way of life. Um, and so this like most of what we have of Shantideva comes out of that text, and you can find that anywhere. That's a Shantideva's way of life. I'm sorry, not, the Bodhisattva's way of life is just a basic Buddhist text that you can find anywhere. If you go to a bookstore or if you go online, it's just like if there are like 10 basic Buddhist texts in a bookstore, one of them is going to be Shantideva. I'm very sure this is something that everyone reads. So this prayer comes out of that. So um, so again, the Bodhisattva's way of life. Um, can you speak to how to hold the desire for everyone to be free from suffering in situations where you've been harmed? by others. I'm finding it really difficult to spiritually let go. I tried to do that today during our practice. I felt a lot of depression, feeling like I'm praying for us all to be well, where while I'm still hurting and have told the other people about that wound and have not experienced any expressions of accountability from those other people, there's a feeling of this feels unfair that comes up that I struggle to deal with, especially as a Libra, right? Um, one of the things that helps me get into this practice is to begin to reflect that if this person wasn't in so much suffering, maybe they wouldn't have hurt me, and if they weren't in suffering, maybe they wouldn't hurt other people. Um, That's a way for me to just like kind of get into wanting someone to be free, particularly the person who's hurt me. Um, and it helps me to understand that it helps me to understand that the work of healing from other people's harm has to begin with my own labor of working with myself. And there are many ways to get into that, but um, I I have to do the work of healing myself. Though I can get support and inspiration and motivation from others around me, at the end of the day, it's me doing the work of healing for myself. Um, I think subtly we have this experience where we blame ourselves subtly for being hurt, for being wounded by someone. I'll just say that I've noticed that in my practice, that every time I feel hurt by someone, I have blamed myself for that hurt. And so in my practice, I know that I have to start with beginning to forgive myself first by actually deepening love and care for myself in the moment, not thinking about trying to forgive anyone or holding people accountable, but first and foremost, I take care of myself, you know. And we have to do that because there are situations where people won't be held accountable. And so, do we just continue to move through life holding on to the deep disappointment of people not being held accountable? Or do we do this work of letting go and forgiving ourselves as we move through things? It's about self agency, right? Ultimately, this is in line with Buddha Dharma, right? That ultimately, like, I have this intense self agency to do tremendous work for myself and others, but I'm afraid to take responsibility for it because it means that I have to move away from fixating to this or around or to this sense of self and ego. And I have to turn outward into this expression of space. We have to start naming, oh, excuse me, we have to start naming our basic fear of space, which means that we have to start naming that we have this really unarticulated terror of ultimate freedom. Like, ultimately, we're afraid of getting free. And to get free, you have to start naming that fear, that terror, and start taking care of it. A lot of us get stuck in our practice, particularly when we get, this is, when we get into more intensive practices around space and openness and dissolving of ego, like, which gets really intense. I know some of you are doing those practices, absolutely. But when you start getting deep, like way deep into these tantric practices, you start confronting that terror that, oh my God, it's like, this is what freedom means. Freedom means I leave what feels comfortable and knowable and solid and real, and I enter into this intense experience of movement and fluidity where there's no ground, right? And that's the ego speaking. The ego is like, well, how are we going to survive if there's no ground, if we're always moving and everything's changing? How do you survive, right? And then we have to look at the ego and say, well, this isn't who I am, actually. Like this experience of self, which is just layers of perceptions and thoughts and feelings that we clump together and say, oh, that looks real, this feels real, this is probably who I am. That's just this illusion, right? And once we start understanding that and then turning more to the space, we don't get thrown into this experience of space. We take one little step at a time. Like we move inch by inch into the space because also want we have to build the capacity to hold the realization of who and what we are, right? And I've seen people move too fast into this experience, and then it creates a lot of harm. I'll just say that it just creates a lot of harm. It creates a deep trauma around space itself or in relationship to space. That trauma, if we don't know how to transcend the trauma, just becomes yet another barrier that keeps us in relationship to ego. Ego loves trauma. That's a great way. Really intense energy and experiences like trauma are foundational for a sense of ego because we can say, this is what I am. This suffering, this is who I am. I can touch it, I can taste it, I can feel it. That's real, right? And the stronger it is, the more likely we are to claim it as real and solid and who I am. This is this kind of liberation work is subtle and nuanced. And this is why I say over and over and over and over again, and many of you have heard me say this, I use phrases and teachings like everything to the mother, or everything must be loved, everything, I have to be grateful for everything. These are just ways of me saying and reminding myself that everything is an expression of emptiness. Everything. There's nothing that isn't. And so my reflections, my contemplations every day has to be about everything that I experience and everything who I and everything that I think I am is just an expression again of this suchness. Like everything. And I am participating and consenting to making up a narrative and a reality that essentially has no real basis in the ultimate reality of things. Like even at some point, at some point you'll have to let go of even you have to let go of even concepts, right? To enter into the door of freedom, of liberation, to the space, like we have to let go of even our concept of justice and accountability, because these are even concepts that get in the way. Because we sit and we say, okay, I can't. There's no way that I can be free until justice and accountability and equity and all of that happens, and that's just another thing that we're telling ourselves about how we don't deserve to be free or we don't have the capacity to be free. You choose freedom regardless of what is happening, and that's one of the places we're practicing towards. You have to just choose it regardless of how unfair shit is. I am still choosing to practice towards liberation regardless of who is held accountable or not. you know, Even when I'm healing myself, I have to choose this over and over again. Yeah, letting go of the concepts. Concepts will get in the way. that's that that's that. It's a real. I know we don't get a lot of writing or literature. People don't talk about this a lot, but like once we get to the threshold of awakening, of enlightenment, the last practice that we do is letting go of even the concepts of enlightenment and liberation. We have to let that go. And once you let that go, you're free. Because these concepts, particularly concepts in terms of like spiritual liberation, they only take us to the threshold, right? And to move over the threshold, let go of wanting to even wanting to get free. You have to let go of everything, desire, concepts, everything. And that's the last jump from the cliff. And this is the scariest. It's actually, the scariest is to let go of everything. This is why I say again, everything to the mother, everything. We start training for that moment of getting to the threshold by starting now and saying, I want to dedicate everything to emptiness, everything to the mother, everything to the medicine Buddha. I just dedicate, and that dedication is just always, always folding reality back. Well, I don't want to use that language actually. So that's this offering of all phenomena into emptiness is just a way for me to remind myself that everything that arises has to go back to where it comes from. Every wave that rises has to go back into the ocean, right? And I want to train myself to get into that energetic movement by offering, right? By allowing myself to enter into that movement of offering over and over again. Everything must be offered. Even the violence that I experience has to be offered over and over again back to itself. You know. Yeah. The ego the ego uses everything to solidify itself. Everything. Even dharma, right? Even liberatory teachings it uses to solidify itself. This is why this is so tricky. You know, right? Everything can be assimilated by the ego to justify its existence. Um, so I'm gonna do this last question here, and then we'll set up. Start transitioning. So I have to do fire ceremony tonight. It's a quick follow up if you have time. What are some ways we can move slow into that relationship with space, as opposed to relationship with ego? Is what our practice is for? Is what our practice is for? Or are there other ways to try? I would say at this moment not to even think about it. You know, I would use as I talked about in the last question, the earlier question, that let's just use formal practice like this, and then let's see how formal practice begins to impact our day to day life, right? And to see the ways practice begins to naturally arise for us as we continue this formal practice. And I would do it like that, you know. Often, I will tell you this: space doesn't feel good. It's going to probably feel like suffering. So when you feel like there's more suffering, possibly that you are experiencing spaciousness, because you're beginning to stretch out from ego. You're beginning to expand from ego, and that's not going to feel good initially. It feels like anxiety, a lot of fear, terror, until you learn how to let this this I guess this sensitivity to space begin to take care of you. When you begin to allow these sensations of space to when you begin to really embody it, I guess. Um, it's like this. It's like being on a roller coaster. In the old traditional roller coasters, you go up an incline to gain momentum, and you get to the top, you go down. So it's like if you've ever been on a roller coaster, you get to the top and you start going down the incline to start, building the momentum to go through the whole track. Like you see people like lift their arms, and I am not, I'm not a person who lifts my arms when I'm going down. That's like, but that's the practice. It's like when I am zooming down an incline, can I just actually lean into it and surrender to it and just throw my arms up and say, here you go, and trust that I'm being cared for, you know, and to begin to find home in this sensation of movement, and speed and all of that, that's where my home is in this movement, in the fluidity, not in being stable and grounded. Can we lean into it? Can we jump into it? And can we trust that we're going to be held through that experience? And I tell you, lastly, and then we're going to finish up because I have to get outside, but the most powerful experience in my practice is when I've gotten to these places where where I consciously say, you know what, I'm choosing not to be a victim anymore. You know, like I'm choosing not to use the trauma to feel special or to feel validated or to feel real. I'm going to actually start reorienting myself to the space, to the openness, to the freedom, and letting go of that. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Check our website and check my website for other programs as well. And please be well. Continue to do the moon practice. That's a nice, easy, gentle practice for us tonight. Just continue to do that and to sleep. Okay. Thank you all, and I will see you next Monday. Okay. Thank you.